Plugged in, recording. Hello guys, I'm Michael, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk about 5 tips that I have for curing depression and mental illness naturally. You won't need to use pharmaceuticals, you won't even need to see doctors necessarily. My tips and my approach are completely natural and holistic. So I'll get right into it. The very first tip, and one of the most important ones, is diet. What are we putting into our bodies? What is our intake like, right? So as we can imagine, diet is essentially a blanket term for what we eat, but I consider diet to be anything that we intake. So that can be food and drink and alcohol and drugs, but it can also be television, the news, books, music, all of these things are input into our system. And so if you're struggling with mental illness and depression, what I highly recommend is to become completely conscious of your intake, your diet. What are you putting in your body? What's coming in? What's going out? How is it functioning? So for me, what I would recommend for anyone struggling with mental illness is get really, really serious about documenting what you eat and what you consume, and take inventory so that you can actually become aware of what it is that's coming in, and then you can therefore alter it. My suggestion is that the diet that will promote the most well-being in our system is going to be something that's near plant-based. So I don't recommend any dogma or any ideology around diet. I just think that we need to find ways that serve our system, and we have to explore. That takes a lot of exploration and curiosity. So part of that would be to begin to transition our diets from, for instance, the SAD diet, the SAD, the standard American diet, to something that's more naturally in tune with our systems and with planet Earth. So for tens of thousands of years, human beings primarily ate plants such as vegetables, fruits, legumes, which is nuts and these sort of things, a little bit of fish, a little bit of eggs, a little bit of poultry, very, very little beef, very, very little pork. And so what we can see is that there's maybe room for experimentation on your end. There are so many plants in the world, there are so many vegetables and fruits in the world, and we can come up with endless combinations. Now, on my channel, I've also posted several cooking videos, so if you're curious and you don't even know where to start there. Start with some of the basic things that I put there, and start to become in tune with your body and the way that the food makes you feel, because it has an incredible impact on the way that our mind functions, because it is part of the fuel of our system, and our mind is not separate from our body. So anything we put in our body, we're also putting in our brain. And if we're coming from a developed country, we might recognize that a majority of the food in the grocery stores is processed with chemicals and preservatives and things that are really, really not good for our system. And we have an agricultural system at the moment that is really not serving human beings' health, nor their mental health, along with their physical health. So that's something we can address in our own time for free. Just do your research, learn and experiment, and don't pick up ideology and dogma. Just be curious and aware. My next tip would be exercise. It seems to be obvious that as a human being, we need to move our bodies, but most of us fail to do that in developed countries. We have societies that have engineered physical movement out of our lives. So we don't move. We sit in our car on the way to work, we sit at home, we sit at the job, we sit everywhere. We don't move. And for the natural human system, that's completely unusual. We, for tens of thousands of years as human beings, moved for hours and hours and hours and hours each day. The minimum that we can do is start to maybe you can download an app. I have a recommendation for you. I have an app called Pacer, and it allows you to track your steps. The kind of target goal would be 10,000 steps a day, and with a brisk 30-minute walk and some other movement throughout your day, you can easily accomplish that, and that can radically alter the way that your brain chemistry is functioning, which in regards to mental health, that's incredibly important. It's a real reset for our brains, and it causes our nervous system to calm, it allows our brain to calm, and it allows our physical body to calm and be healthy in the long run. I'm a young person. If you're a young person, you have to recognize that we're not really being set up to win in this level, and so we have to find our own way to create physical well-being in our system. Therefore, we produce mental well-being in our system. My next tip would be nature heals. So this is something that might get into a bit of esoteric and a bit woo-woo to you, and that's okay. I don't mind, because my experience is that nature has healing power. When we indulge ourselves or put ourselves into the ocean, into rivers, on mountains, touching plants and trees and grass, this has profound healing effects for our body and for our mind. Now, of course, like I said, it's a bit hippy-dippy, right? But also scientifically we've proven, we have plenty of evidence to show that nature has a calming effect on our nervous system, and us being in sort of concrete jungles long term is not something that we really are built for, and so we need to connect to earth. For instance, where I used to live in many places near the ocean. In Mexico, I lived near the ocean. In Oaxaca, in California, I lived in a place called Laguna Beach. Many of these places that I live that are near nature, in the mountains or near the ocean, have profound healing effects. And I would go the distance to say that, for instance, a place like Laguna Beach is a profound and mystically important place, and there's profound healing powers in the ocean there. And if that doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. Explore. You literally don't know. You have not contacted it in this way, so you don't know. So you have to explore and find out for yourself. So for me, one of the things that I do to produce well-being in my system on a daily basis is get in touch with the ground. I touch my bare feet onto the grass, onto the dirt. I walk around. That's an incredibly grounding experience. You know, think about the word I said. It's called grounding. So we're grounding ourselves, and of course scientifically we can see that there's a discharge of positive and negative ions through the feet into the ground, and that's sort of the scientific basis for this. But frankly, what I would like to get you into the mindset of is, it doesn't have to be proven in a study by a particular institution for it to be functional for you. You have to discover if it's functional for you or not, because maybe none of this is functional for you, and that's okay. But if it is, and you'll have to explore it to figure that out, right? You have to explore and find your own experience, within your own experience, what works for your system. Now, another tip I have for you is trauma work. We have so much trauma in so many of our lives, right? Now, what is trauma? Trauma is essentially anything that any experience that we have that disturbs our physical, mental, or emotional bodies. Now, what that means is that we have experiences such as abuse and violence, all the way down to neglect and abandonment and sense of being rejected, maybe just in a certain moment by peers when we're young. Many of us experience trauma when we're young. And what I recognize in my own experience is that mental health and mental illness has been a direct result in my life of trauma. It's an advanced coping mechanism is what I've discovered in my life. My mental illness manifested as a way to protect me in my young years. But what I had to realize is that now those tools are no longer useful to me in the same way, and I have to let them go. So what that means is that we have to go into our deeper selves, into our past experiences, and really find integration in all of this trauma that we experienced. We need to come to terms with this trauma and really start to understand the deeper meaning of it and why it happened to us, and what we can do to embrace that pain and also forgive anyone that might have harmed us in the process, because a lot of what we're suffering from is really unresolved emotions and feelings, and it's sort of like a water hose, flaring around. We need to tie that thing off, and we need to find compassion for ourselves and compassion for the other person or other people in the experience of trauma. Of course, that's way easier said than done, right? Most of us would prefer to just never deal with that again, never open up that can of worms. And here's the thing. If you want healing, this is the process. You are trying to heal from trauma. And in order to do that, you have to get really down and dirty sometimes. You have to get real with yourself. This is part of what mental illness is pointing us to. We're severely lacking authenticity, because maybe our lifestyle, our mind, our thoughts, so many parts of our lives are completely out of sync with who we really are and our truth. And part of that truth, and part of this integration process, is finding that truth, discovering that truth, and bringing it into our sense of self, into our conception of life. If we have a sort of fake positive focus, but not any real connection to the darker parts of our experience, then we're going to be fragmented and we're going to be a disintegrated person. We're not going to be whole. And what we're trying to do is produce holistic healing in the system of the human being, right? Now, my last tip is, I think, very, very crucial in my experience, and I think it would be in yours as well. So a lot of us, what we struggle with when we have depression, when we have bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, any sort of this realm of mental dis-ease and illness, is lots of patterns in our minds that are completely out of control. And what we can recognize with the gaining of self-awareness through journaling, through many different awareness exercises, as well as mindfulness meditation, we can discover that these thoughts have so much weight to them, and they bring us into an energetic state. And if we don't find a way to manage these thoughts and do something about them and produce thoughts that we would prefer to be thinking, we will be weighed down and depressed and sucked down by these patterns in our minds. So first, the step that we have to take is to become aware of our minds, aware of our thoughts. We have to observe our thoughts instead of them just... And so we have to create an observer position. Once we can create and build the muscle of observation, those negative thoughts, first of all, they have less potency because we're not so in them. We're a little back from them. It's a skill that we have to develop. It's a muscle we have to develop, right? And so this is the premise of mindfulness meditation, becoming mindful, full of mind, full of awareness. And so once we have that step back, we can not only observe the thoughts, the negative thoughts, the positive thoughts, and let them roll by as they do. They are fleeting and they are passing. Not only that, what we can do is we can recognize the power that we have to actually dictate our feeling state via our thoughts and the patterns that we engage in our minds. Many of us are so deeply ingrained into negative thought patterns, we don't have really a meaningful way out. It's such a heavy weight that it is. And of course, you can imagine depression, weight, heaviness. These thoughts are depressing us. And maybe we assume that it's the outside world depressing us, but it's not the job that is depressing you necessarily. It's the meaning that your thoughts have given to the experience of working at a particular place that give us suffering. And of course, through many, many spiritual traditions, that's been plainly clear and articulated that this suffering comes from the way that we label these experiences. The meaning that we give to our father, our mother, our neighbor, our cousin, our enemy, whatever that label is, that's how we're going to experience that person in the world around us. And so what we can do is take charge of those thoughts. Not only can we let the negative thoughts go, but we can actively engage in things like gratitude practice, positive thought practices, not with a negation of the negative, but the thing is, we have this incredible negative muscle. We have incredible negative muscles, and we have not developed the positive muscles. In order to gain equilibrium and therefore healing through a natural way from our mental illness, we have to gain self-awareness and the ability to build the muscle of positivity in our minds, to create a garden in our minds. And that's what we're here to do. So these are generally my basic tips and thoughts. I have an incredibly extensive list of ideas to share with you guys, so I hope you keep coming back. And I have a few more really pointed tips, especially in the realm of trauma healing, because I feel like this is crucial and completely overlooked by many of our experiences with psychiatrists and psychologists. I believe that pharmaceuticals are absolutely not the answer, and now we have, for many decades, scientific studies that have shown that people that go on to antipsychotics actually have a worse outcome than people that never entered into the system in the first place. Because what we need is not to avoid these episodes or this depression. We need to engage with it in a meaningful way and pull the meaning and derive the meaning out of it so that we can find integration and healing. And that's my goal, is to help you find that and to share with you my journey as to how I healed myself from severe, crippling suicidality and mental illness through completely natural cures without medications. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope you can subscribe and like this video and leave me a comment. I'm really interested to engage with you guys, because this is new for me, and I would love to see what you guys think and where you're at in your own lives and journeys. All right, enjoy your day. Peace out.